Well, welcome. I'm Julian Rankin. I'm the director of the Walter Anderson Museum of Art, and I'm pleased today to be interviewing Ed Croom. Ed Croom is a photographer and retired ethnobotanist. How did you get interested in photography? Just what has your photo journey been?
So I really started doing photography when I was 19 years old, before I was a botanist. And at that age, learned how to do darkroom work and develop my film. And then at Chapel Hill as an undergraduate, I actually took a course in the physics of photography. But then I went to grad school later as a botanist. And as a botanist, you have to take pictures of plants, what's called their habit, which is what they look like, how they grow, and their habitat.
I know we'll talk a bit about how the Land of Rowan Oak specifically is about the characters of Faulkner's Rowan Oak that people sometimes walk past without seeing them a little closer. So how does that science background influence the way you see the world and see plants?
I think when you've had courses in ecology and plant anatomy and plant morphology, which is the structure, ethnobotany, I studied the uses of plants, so I'm interested in how they set in the landscape. And I think it informs how I look at them, and I look at them from different points of view that way.
When you began this journey of photographing Faulkner's home, a landmark location there in Oxford, you began it and continued it over many years and more than a decade, and continuing even today. Tell us a bit just about what that journey has been like, revisiting the same place and looking not at the home as much, but the landscape that surrounds it.
You visit a place again and again because you know it's not the same. Every time you go, it's different. So it's obvious when it's snow versus rain, but you watch over decades that change. These photographs for me are a reflection more of your, real study and love of a place, not just how many plant parts, in a flower or something. You're trying to show people, hey, this is a great place, and a lot of people like Rowan Oak for various reasons. Many of them who have never read a word of Faulkner love to go there.
There is a ghost of Faulkner. I mean, Faulkner's long gone. He's not a living character there anymore, except in the memory of people, and the house stands as a bit of an analog of Faulkner himself. I think it's interesting when you think about plants as characters in your work, because these things are still living. What are those plants and trees and landscapes saying to you, especially at Rowan Oak, where they were alive, some of them, when Faulkner was there?
Yes, they are. And of course, most of the cedar trees were there long before Faulkner. The house and the landscape was first developed in the 1840s, probably. And so it has a history, right? And cedar trees live a fairly long time. And so the plants, to me, show they can kind of be a visual marker of a place for a long time. And I'm interested in this, how we as people relate to plants in the land.
The layperson, myself included, does not know enough about the native plants that surround us as we walk through the world. But what are some of the different kind of plants and trees and wildlife that you see at Rowan Oak that you've depicted in these photographs?
The picture that I call like the Cedar Spirit, this wounded looking thing, and how it's healed itself over time. It's probably been hit by winds and broken limbs, and you become where it's a marker. And actually, I'd been there for a long time before I just got out one morning and I looked and the light just hit it, and I said, oh my gosh, these are just like ancient spirits, Some people say that the cedars were planted here because yellow fever wasn't found where cedar trees grew. Well, cedar trees, it turns out, is long before we knew what caused yellow fever, grow in drier ground, right? And we know that mosquitoes that spread yellow fever, just like malaria, like to have a little puddle of water somewhere. So it shows to me part of the history of the place. When I show people the gardenias, a lot of times that picture on the gardenia, which is on the back cover and towards the back of the book, I'll say, what is this? And believe it or not, other people say, it's a magnolia. And it's like it's already planted in their mind that it's a magnolia. Beautiful flower. And to me, the picture we have in the book reminds me of just the light hit it right. It's almost like if you were in Asia, a lotus or something. There's something tranquil, and you can just look at it a long time. Really, when I photographed Roanoke, I tried to turn off a lot of my analytical, botanical mind. I said, I love this place, and I want people who come and either have already loved it or could love it to just show the spirit more of the place, the beauty, the essence of it.
Coming from the Walter Anderson Museum, we obviously think about the land a lot too, and one of the paradigm shifts that Anderson thought about was looking from nature, not at nature. And I think some of that image that we've been discussing is redolent of that idea, where people who might visit Roanoke and see the house as this the central anchor, if you change that perspective and that focal point, then you start to see perhaps from a little bit more objective perspective, and to let the other histories creep in.
Faulkner famously didn't like to work in the garden. He said only new money would ruin such a place, by cleaning it up. So they evoke stories. But let's face it, if your guy's tired and you don't want to do that, it's also a good reason to say, well, I don't want to mess with that. Let me take that to near where you live. So the live oak tree, remember he first did the palms and some work on the coast. You will see those connections the more you study plants. I want to mention one other one on the outside, and it's in Lafayette County, and that's the Yakima River picture. Famously, Yakima River's attributed to where his I Lay Dying probably was set for when they were going through floods and losing wagons and trying to cross. It was probably the Yakima River, is what most people think from what Faulkner said. I like to say what it means for Faulkner, but what does it mean to so many people? I met so many people. They had a picnic there, or they had a great conversation there. There are a lot of memories at Roanoke. So I did this, and once the book came out, I found out even more. What did people think about it?
Well, you can learn a lot by looking at the landscape that surrounds a place, and in this case, Roanoke. I think what was interesting, you were talking about this earlier with Faulkner's reticence to care too much, to manicure too much the property, and whether that was a function of he had other things to do, or he thought that, and it's probably a mix of both, that he also thought that these things should have their own life and should die and decay and grow beyond the confines of kind of a hedgerow. I think it also is an easy metaphor to talk about his writing, which is layered and flowing and creeping like vines, and sometimes hard to get through. If some people certainly would say so, and I think that's a part of function of why it was so revolutionary too. It's this stream of consciousness. Well, the stream of consciousness of plant life is to let them grow and to let them flourish, and then to decay and to die or to persist. Plants have a way of speaking across time, and I think Faulkner's Roanoke and Faulkner's writing also have a way of opening up larger conversations, whether those are American conversations or just human conversations. Did you think about that much, or even either during the time of documenting these things, perhaps after when the book came out, or just living so close to it? It's something in your backyard that you can walk right down the street and find, but do you also see it as a way to connect to other times and other places?
So I agree with you, and that's why I like Roanoke. I think it has the potential to be a great learning for nature and people and our history, because a lot of people live in Oxford just say, oh, you can't understand Faulkner, he's so difficult to read. But so I came through him how he treated the land and what did it mean to him. He wanted to hear nature. He wanted to smell nature. So I think there's a connection there with your Walter Anderson. I treat it as a meditation. I clear my mind. I don't think. I don't go in with a purpose. I just say, what's here? What's here? And if you were a botanist studying a flora, that's what you would do too. You say, what's here? You don't go in with overlay. But then when you look at it, you say, as an ethnobotanist especially, I've studied the historical and comparative uses of plants all over the world and through time. And that's what Faulkner does. Faulkner to me was like a folklorist documenting what people said and thought about their land. And he also was a great student of recording stories of what it was in the past.